WoW Killer is a production of amove.tv. Check out amove TV for many more podcasts, multiple about Blizzard games. And for more of Taliesin's WoW coverage, check out Taliesin and Evitel on YouTube and twitch.tv.
Welcome to the Dick Hungry Chicken.
I find that humorous for two reasons. One, I got so many people writing in about how hilarious they thought that was, and two, you were almost right on time with when that music automatically
I was
lowers in
leaving it as
volume.
long as I could. I was leaving it as long as I could because I knew that any second now you were going to start the intro, and I was like, I've got to start before he does, but we can't overlap. But I was playing chicken. I was waiting till I could see the whites of your eyes. I was like, welcome to the Dick Hungry Chicken. Welcome everyone to the Dick Hungry Chicken, episode 20.
Wait, oh god, I am so busy right now, and damn it, we need a shirt. Like, I know we need a Dick Hungry Chicken shirt for this show before we need an actual WoW Killer shirt. Like, that is how much that stupid joke has resonated with our listeners.
Oh, less of the joke. What are you talking about?
I guess
This is the moment that changes everything.
It was a story. Right? I mean, it was a dramatic telling of a formative moment in your poor cousin's life.
Yeah, this is it. Like, okay, look, we tried with WoW Killer. We tried really hard. All right, it didn't really work out. Clearly, the world is ready for Dick Hungry Chicken. It's like Sargon of Akkad. Do you remember when he was like just some dude that was, stealing people's money to not make a video game for a while, and like that wasn't really working out for him, and then he discovered like the right-wing kind of like podcast market, and he got into that, and that's what he became, and that's what we are. We tried WoW Killer, we tried to kill WoW. It can't be done. WoW's still around, and we failed, so now it's the Dick Hungry Chicken.
It's the DHC. If folks, if you know anything about me, it's that
Bex is willing to make us a Dick Hungry Chicken shirt. I'd offer to pay you, Bex, but I'm pretty sure making that shirt would be its own reward.
Yeah, it definitely would. So we will gladly accept your free design.
Can we please have, if we're having a range of Dick Hungry Chicken merchandise, can we have like boxer shorts as well to protect your willy from hungry chickens?
Well, then it's going to need to have a button or no fly at all.
Or like a steel crotch protector.
Are we selling male chastity belts? Is that what's going on now?
I mean, if it protects your dick from the hungry chicken, it's a small price to pay.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's a good three-letter acronym. I'm into it.
On topic so well this episode already. This is fantastic.
It is absolutely phenomenal. Folks, welcome back to WoW Killer, masquerading as the DHC. This week we are doing a mailbag episode, our mailbag episode for the month of June. These are emails that came into our inbox over at wowkillercast@gmail.com. So if you're listening to this and you're done laughing or turning the volume down because maybe there are small children in the room, you want to be a part of the show.
Tell the small children about it. This is what started this conversation. A 5-year-old boy, the victim of a Dick Hungry Chicken. Don't protect your children. Like you think you're protecting your children by not telling them about the Dick Hungry Chicken, but you won't be saying that when the Dick Hungry Chicken gets its way. You won't be saying that. Tell your children. Warn them. Isn't that right, Garrett?
Sorry, I brought a prop. That's what you want to avoid.
I just pissed you off. I thought you just retired. I thought you just resigned.
So for the audio only listeners, I have a wrought iron chicken head door knocker that I've been meaning to hang on the door of my studio. Well, I don't, and the mouth is the knocker. So this is now the mascot for the DHC.
Be careful what height you hang that on your door.
I'm a tall man, so if it's a door knocker, it's going pretty high. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
Don't worry. Anyways, folks, if you want to be a part of the show, wowkillercast@gmail.com is where you can send those emails. And we're just going to get right into it with no more mention of chickens, I hope.
20 minutes this stream has been live. 20 minutes.
if y'all aren't going to twitch.tv/amovetv for the live show, you're missing out on a lot of just random off-topic BS before we start the show. That's today. It was 90s cartoons.
How unlike the show itself.
You're missing out on just extra WoW Killer content. This show should just be a recording of the entire stream, no editing, no start and stop. Like, you just folks can sit through between 15 to 30 minutes of absolute random BS before we try to talk about World of Warcraft. That'll be the show. But our first email today comes to us from Uthos on Proudmoore, who says, "You get a high elf, and you get a high elf, and you get a high elf. Seriously, what do you think of the lore implications of the high elves both rejoining the Blood Elves and the Void Elves? Do you think Varisa will take her place in Silvermoon? We can see from the Adder poem that Theron was really affected by Kael turning his back on the High Elves to follow his pursuit in folly and his anger toward himself for not seeing, quote, the light sooner. And how would you feel about the Sethrak and the Forsaken Blood Elves as allied races for the Horde and Alliance respectfully? Thanks." Also, apparently, Uthos is a big TNA fan and patron. Wanted you to know that.
I was going to be horrible to you, but now I'll be nice. No, thank you very much. I think there's some important things to pick up on the whole high elf thing, and I think there's some important clarifications to make and some lines to be drawn. Not because I think the questioner doesn't know or understand, but just to make it clear for the listeners. So, in Shadowlands, at the moment, currently in character customization options, that have been promised by Blizzard and previewed by Blizzard, and some of them have found their way onto the alpha, but not all of them yet, is the addition of blue eyes of various shades for Blood Elves, and also blue eyes and Blood Elf skin tones for Void Elves. And what this means, it means that both Alliance and Horde can now create characters that look like the classic High Elf model, as in, not voidy skinned, just like Blood Elf like skin tones, Blood Elf kind of hair, although the hair on Void Elves hasn't been clarified yet, and blue eyes. So those High Elves that you see hanging around Dalaran and in Stormwind and up in the Argent Tournament and things like that, those Alliance High Elves who follow Varisa and are outside Suramar with the Blood Elves and with the Night Elves, you can now, for the first time, create characters that look like them. And whether those actually are High Elves in the sense that people mean High Elves when they say High Elves is a bit of a moot point. But the important thing is that, or I say a moot point, it's kind of a controversial topic because no one can really decide. But yeah, we're in a situation now where for the first time, Alliance and Horde can both create things that at least look like High Elves. And they've never been able to do that before. So it's kind of a big deal because we kind of assumed it was never really going to happen. And, there's a huge part of the community that has been wanting it to happen since year dot. And take control of those High Elves and role play as them and play them in game. And I mean role play in both like the hardcore role play sense, but also the light sense that anyone does when they're playing World of Warcraft. Like, I don't care what anyone says. Even if someone is just like a massive raider and that's the only reason you play is for like competitive PvP or raiding and stuff like that, there's still always an element of RP that goes with you playing the game, like no matter what. And whether it be just giving your character a name, instead of using like the random generator or something like that, there's an element of RP that goes into that play. And this is like really important to a lot of players, this High Elf thing. We've made kind of videos looking into it and what have you. And it's interesting. What do you think the implications for it are? Garrett?
I was going to go extrapolate into slightly more theoretical territory of I understand that they're not actual like quote unquote High Elves on the Horde side, but would it be the end of the world if both Alliance and Horde got High Elves? Like
No.
if they just came out and said it, and this isn't even me getting back on the let us just cross faction lines horse, even though I still very much believe that. Like we have Pandaren, they can be on either side. They just get to make a choice.
A lot of people have said that. A lot of people have said, why not just make high elves a neutral race like Pandaren? And I don't think a neutral race is something that we'll see in WoW again. Blizzard have quite publicly kind of come out and said that they kind of regret making Pandaren a neutral race.
I find that so freaking weird.
Yeah.
Because for me, like, I think, well, what's the issue? Is it like silhouettes in PvP because you gave the exact Blood Elf model to the Alliance in the High Elves?
I don't think it's that. I think it's more from just like a gameplay and kind of philosophical point of view. The idea that they're so different and they're so the same. Sorry, there's so lack of difference between them. They're literally like friends who just join different teams, which is fine until you have a story like BFA where Horde and Alliance are at each other's throat. And then you're like, I don't know if these Pandaren would really be each other's throat like this. It's kind of weird, you know. It's although I guess if human history proves anything, it's that they absolutely would be.
But WoW history proves anything. Like again, now we're back on the faction discussion, which is every big bad unites the Horde and Alliance against them, and then they forget about it and get grumbly, and then we end up in another Garrosh situation. I'm still waiting for my evil Alliance leader that I was promised, by the way.
Oh yeah, it'll happen. It'll happen. Have you not seen the latest data mining? The data mining broadcast text?
No.
Do you want me to tell you?
Go for it.
Okay, red bot spoiler bot on the stream here. But just only for a couple of minutes. Don't worry. But on the alpha at the moment, not on the alpha even, but in data mine broadcast text, it would appear that in the pre-patch for Shadowlands, we kind of accidentally lose Anduin. Now, we don't know what's happened to him. We think he can probably be rescued. Maybe he's off on a little mission of his own. But we do know that throughout the course of Shadowlands, there are various lore characters that we have to rescue from the Maw. Like, we all get sent to the Maw at the very beginning of Shadowlands, and we escape because we're the Maw Walkers, but a lot of characters don't, and they're stuck there. So we know that we have to save Jaina. We know that we have to save Tyrande. Like, that's part of the story of Shadowlands. So it would seem like Anduin is one of those. And that means that the throne of Stormwind, and therefore the entire Alliance, because for some unknown reason, whoever sits on the throne of Stormwind is the leader of the Alliance de facto. That makes no sense, but there we go. Is empty and gets filled by, who do you think becomes King of Stormwind, Garrett?
Greymane, because they suddenly remembered he was still a character.
Close. And everyone thinks it should be Greymane, but Greymane's not interested. He steps aside, and it's Tyrallion. Tyrallion is currently King of Stormwind. And I don't know if you remember the Il'gynoth whisper from Ny'alotha.
I have committed them all to memory. No, of course I don't.
No, I mean the new set, which people didn't pay quite so much attention to. But there's one that suddenly seems like quite interesting. Where are these whispers? Okay. The Golden One claims a vacant throne. The crown of light will bring only darkness. Which didn't mean that everyone thought that meant Anduin, but now with Tyrallion, the Golden One, not the Golden One as in the like white supremacist YouTuber, not him, but Tyrallion, bad news as well.
I mean, you could say Tyrallion, the light supremacist.
Yeah, maybe. But well, he's never done anything like that. Like, please, like, you might have your doubts about the light, okay? You might be like, yeah, but like, he doesn't make videos about the Jewish question. However much you dislike Tyrallion, he's not making videos about the Jewish question, okay? Like, he's not a fucking white supremacist. He might be a light supremacist, but I guess we'll find that out.
Well, if he starts hanging out with Yrel, then yeah, I think he's gonna go full light. I mean, that'd
be hard to live in different dimensions, but yeah, maybe. Anyway, so he is now on the throne of Stormwind, and Il'gynoth warned us about this. And, it's quite an interesting sort of thing. So you might be seeing and all it does is it kind of backs up my theory that the next expansion is going to be an intergalactic choose your side light versus void disco war. And this all seems to be backing out at the moment, right?
Please give me void paladins. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And why not? Why not?
Talking about roleplay, I have it's the only max level copied max level tunes I have right now. I have 2 max level paladins on either side of the factions. So yeah, I need to roleplay my don't be a militant light worshiper.
So you might be getting your dodgy alliance leaders soon enough.
Finally.
But back to the high elf question.
Yes, back to the high elf question.
I agree with you. I see no reason not to have legit high elves on both Horde and Alliance at this stage. And that's absolutely fine. The problem would be, the problem I always had with the high elf thing was Ian Hazacostas saying that the blood elves were high elves, which is a bit like saying that Americans just are English people. It's like, yeah, we're genetically the same, but there are differences of politics and allegiance and all the rest of it as well, and lifestyle choices and things like that, and geographical location. The problem I always had was with Alliance not getting high elves, rather than the Horde shouldn't be allowed them.
Wait, are you saying that you're a high elf and I am a blood elf?
Yep.
Well, that explains why we both have amazing hair.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean the high elves and the dark elves are genetically the high elves and the blood elves are genetically the same, but they're different because they belong to different allegiances and things like that.
They're distinctly different cultures at this point.
Yeah, exactly, and that's fine. That's okay. Now, is it okay to have high elves that would like to go and join the blood elves now that the Sunwell is back up and working, and now that they kind of got over their whole fell crystal kind of thing going on, and all of that, that's absolutely fine. So I'm completely 100% behind the idea that blood elves can have high elf options that just make them exactly like high elves. I think that's brilliant, as long as Alliance have them too. And I think that seems to be the case with what they're doing for void elves, which I think is very interesting. And of course, people are saying, well, I want proper high elves. I don't want a void elf. But there are high elves who become void elves in the void elf starting area. There are literally high elves arriving in through portals from Stormwind to join up with the void elves. These are legit high elves. And I always felt like void elf basically felt more like a class than a race anyway, to be honest. And that kind of sort of backs that up. So and it's true that high elves created for the Alliance via void elves might not answer every single element of the question that people that have been asking for Alliance high elves have been asking. But to all intents and purposes, it allows you to create an Alliance elf with blue eyes, and hopefully, although this has not been clarified, blonde hair and stuff as well, because that's kind of important too. The hair is kind of important. I mean,
it's besides the ears, the most important reason you would roll an elf.
Yeah, and presumably the void elves, it's been said that they will be getting all of the blood elf skin options as well. So that means the ones that are in game now, but also the more varied and darker skin tones that are on the alpha for them as well. And presumably that means the ear length customization as well, because it would be a bit weird if blood elves had ear length customization and eyebrow customization, and night elves as well, but high elves, but void elves didn't. It'd be a bit weird. So presumably it means they'll be getting those too. So it's super interesting. And beyond that, whether or not lore-wise, sort of in-game, they even are the high elves that everyone wants. Steve Danusa said a really interesting thing on our interview with him, actually, on our stream over at Taliesin and Evitel, when we had an interview with him. which lasted like an hour and a half in the end because I kept asking questions when he wanted to go. And this was one of the very last ones that we got in. And we said, like, you know, we noticed that in Shadowlands, you know, a lot of these options are kind of law breaking from the point of view of the starting area that your character starts in, right? So, like, when you're a dwarf and you start playing the game, you are very specifically an iron forged dwarf. You know, you are a bronzebeard. Like, that's kind of explicit. You're not a dark iron dwarf. That's why they had to make that an allied race. And you're not a wildhammer dwarf. When you start a troll character, you are very explicitly a dark spear troll. You know, you're not a sand fury. You're not like a Garabushi. You're not like a forest troll. You're not any of these other ones. That's made explicit. And yet, in these new customization options, we have options for dwarves, which are clearly Wildhammer dwarf like customizations. We've got customizations for trolls, which change their skin tone to sand troll colors and forest troll colors.
Yeah,
all things that we really want. And we asked Steve Nooser, we like, does this mean, are these characters sand trolls? Are these characters Wildhammer dwarves? And he said his answer, and this is like, you know, lead narrative designer on WoW. He said, it doesn't matter. He said, the important thing is that they look like them. And finally, the important thing is that as a player, you can make your character look like them. Like, whether they are sand trolls or not is literally up to you. Like, we can't say. That's not our, as game devs, it's not our right to say. And that's the same with like Wildhammer dwarves and stuff. And it's the same with being able to make your void elf look like a high elf. It's like, dude, the important thing is that you can make it look like that. And to you, it's a high elf.
There's concessions that have to be made because it's a game and at some point there's limited resources, right? Like,
yeah.
They're not going to go make 3 more unique starting zones for trolls just so you can canonically say beyond the shadow of a doubt, I am a Gurubashi, I am a sand troll, so on and so forth, right? And so, yeah, I really agree with that answer. I love that Denuzer's answer was it doesn't matter, because that's where I fall. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I have my own headcanon, which is why.
And I think that's perfect. And it was the perfect answer. And like, I like Steve Nooser a lot. I've got a lot of time for him. I think he's a splendid human being. But that was a much better answer than I expected him to give, frankly. And like, although on that subject, it's worth bringing up that, of course, you can bypass those specific starting areas now. Like, if you are starting a new troll character, there's no reason for you to start in the Dark Spear starting area. There's no reason for you to start.
You were absolutely
because now
correct.
there is Exile's Reach. So if you actually wanted to play out the RP properly, you know, if that is important to you, and you're starting like I'm starting a Wildhammer dwarf right now, but it doesn't feel right being referred to as like a Bronzebeard in the starting area. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. Now you can just go to Exile's Reach. And you can do it that way. So that is quite freeing. And a lot of people mentioning a race that always gets mentioned when these things get brought up, particularly when you talk about elves, Dark Rangers as well. You know, Sylvanus's Dark Rangers who use the high elf model, but they've got red eyes and white skin, obviously, because they're undead and stuff like that. I would be incredibly surprised if Blood Elves did not get Dark Ranger options going into Shadowlands at this stage. It would just seem weird if they didn't. They're getting like everything else, and I would expect those options not to find their way over to Void Elves. But for Blood Elves, it seems weird not to have Dark Ranger options now. Like, just like super white porcelain skin because they're undead, or not even, like, who cares? But the red eyes are the important part.
As happy as that would make me, because I will take Dark Rangers any way I can get them. And when they do land, I will never play another race in my life. I kind of really want them to be an allied race so we can get heritage armor, because you can't be a Dark Ranger without like amazing hoods.
No, you're right, but you can get everything that Dark Rangers wear in game as transmog already.
Yeah, but I want a better, cooler looking one. The heritage armor sets are amazing, and you know, Tally, you know that if they did heritage armor for Dark Rangers, it would be the most edgelord, like, gloomy, hanging out in the corner of a tavern somewhere, like your Aragorn thing you've ever seen.
Massive as well, you know that.
Well, they need to be, or would they? Would they actually tone it down to kind of keep with the Dark Ranger, ethos?
I would love to see Blood Elves get their Dark Ranger options. Also, it'd be nice to have something for Blood Elves which was unique. I know they've got their heritage armor, but if Void Elves are essentially getting all of that, I don't think Void Elves will get Blood Elves hairstyles, but I'd like to see Void Elves get Blood Elf hair colors. And if it'd be nice for Blood Elves to have something unique, Dark Rangers. And also I'd like to see Night Elves get that as well, because there are Night Elf Dark Rangers these days too. And I would like to see them get red eye options and kind of like undead features as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask me what is the number one thing I want in World of Warcraft, it would honestly be every race can be undead and undead versions of every race in the game. My second answer would be Dark Rangers. Any way I can get them. Yeah,
for sure. I believe that. What was the second part of that question from the mailbag, Garrett? Because
how do you feel about the Sethrak and the Forsaken Blood Elves as allied races for Horde and Alliance, respectfully?
Oh, I mean, yeah, we kind of touched on that. Yeah. In BFA, I would have said like let's make them allied races, but I actually really like Shadowlands' kind of solution to all of this, which is just to make them like customization options for existing races. I think it's a really elegant solution, and I think I'd like to see Dark Ranger options on Blood Elves and things like that. Personally, I would like to see Forsaken given more racial options. So I would like to see like undead versions of other races be Forsaken customization options. So you make your Forsaken character, and like at the moment it's a Forsaken human. It's very specifically a Lordaeron human. And like all of your options are human options. Well, they are the Forsaken version of human stuff. I'd like to see one of the body types being a dwarf, or one of the body types being an elf, or like I'd like that to be a Forsaken option rather than having like an allied race, which is like the Forsaken version of a race. I'd rather see them just be Forsaken options in the
agreed.
Yeah,
I really feel that BFA would have been the expansion. We would have gotten like a Dark Ranger or like an undead, Blood Elf, because Sylvanas was such a fixture. But
a whole Forsaken dwarf, someone's asking in the comments. Yeah, that's exactly what they would be. I mean, don't forget the Forsaken are humans. Like saying a Horde Forsaken dwarf is no weirder than saying a Horde Forsaken human. Like, we know that they raise dwarfs and stuff, and yeah.
Tally. This is all the more reason that they should just do away with faction divides, because then...
No, I like the faction divide.
Throw it all out the window. Don't need to worry about silhouettes or any of that other crap.
No one's bothered about silhouettes these days, but like, I like having the Horde Alliance divide. I like finding ways of undermining that divide, which it sounds like they're going to be doing in Shadowlands with like some world quests which are Covenant world PvP. Instead of faction. That's what Ian Hazakostis has suggested might happen in some of these world quests, is that they're kind of like world PvP world quests, but they are divided by faction rather than
by covenant instead of by faction. Yeah. No, that is
super interesting. And that could totally be laying down the groundwork for my Void versus Light pick your side intergalactic disco war.
All right, here's how we get what I really want, because for me, for the most part, my desire to play cross-faction doesn't involve PvP. I just want to be able to run dungeons or raids with my friends. I don't care what they're playing. Just let me run dungeons or raids. Make the Halloween masks last all year, and you have to have one for the opposing faction, and then you can group up and run dungeons with them, but you have to wear the mask for the opposing faction. So orcs wearing really bad human masks, they get to go join their Alliance buddies group to go run a dungeon.
I totally agree with that. I would be up for that, just being able to join any old faction for dungeons and raids. I would also be up for a loosening of the restrictions on some races. Like, I see no reason why Tauren couldn't join the Horde or Alliance. I see no reason why, like...
Oh, I like that. So making the decision to allow it where it makes sense from a lore perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and just make an Alliance Tauren. I don't care. I think that would be fun. And so like I'm up for either of these solutions, but I like the Horde and Alliance, and I wouldn't want to lose it. I find like it's an important part. And I feel like if you were going to lose it, BFA was the time to lose it. Like the faction war expansion is when you have a big change in factions. If you're going to disband the factions, like the end of BFA was going to be the perfect time to do it.
Yeah,
like story wise.
Yeah, for me, it's more of a it is more of a gameplay concern than a lore concern, but at the same time, it's like, come on, we join forces all the time. Let's get
snake
going.
People, unfortunately, the snake people is never going to happen.
It is unfortunate. I would love more just wild fantasy races that are playable by players, but
yeah, and I get it. The models just aren't the right type of models. There's clearly no intent on Blizzard's side to make
more hope than Naga, because do you just do tube pants for that slot, or just no pants at all?
Well, okay, so with mechanomes having like mechanical parts, like am I right in thinking mechanomes don't wear pants? Like it doesn't matter what pants you equip on a mechanome, they don't wear them because they got little robot legs, mate. So we have now established that it's okay to have a race that doesn't equip pants. We already know that it's okay to have a race that doesn't have visibly equipped shoes because they've existed since the very start of the game. So now, apart from the mounting issue, like mounting mounts, one of the big barriers to having Naga as a playable race is gone. The idea that they can't equip pants and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Now we have a race that does that.
Now, Tauren and trolls do get leg warmers. It's not the entire boot model isn't just Forsaken. They get
but the point is that like with mechanomes, like we've established that it's okay to have a race that doesn't have visibly equipped pants. And that was always cited as like a major reason why we wouldn't have Naga. The fact that they've got no legs and can't really get on a horse is probably another one, to be perfectly honest.
You could side saddle a Naga. That'd be fine.
Yeah, but then you have to kind of
they loop around the bottom. They like hug their mount with their tail.
Sounds like a lot of work, man.
I will figure this out.
Just saying.
And yes, chat room, I am a mechanome. You have never seen my pants on stream. All right.
I'm a mechanome in the fact that I just don't equip them.
Jason writes in and says, without getting too deep into the actual timey-wimey things that happened in WoW in the past, I feel like there are a couple things that may come up in Shadowlands, and I wanted your thoughts. 1, are there any people that were killed in one timeline but lived in another? Do we think somebody could meet themselves in the underworld? 2, what about someone who died twice like Gul'dan? Are there 2 of them hanging out bowling? Just wanted your thoughts on the underworld in regards to some of the time travel issues we've seen. Keep killing it, Jason. Well, Jason, I'm not sure how to talk about this without getting too deep into timey-wimey things, but
yeah. So the simple answer is we don't know. The obvious answer is we might know later on. But Gul'dan is a fascinating example. And like I've always asked, like, when people ask the really obvious Shadowlands question, like what dead people do you want to see in Shadowlands? And I'm always like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't want Shadowlands to be like a parade of references and like cameos and stuff like that.
I think it's cool that they can it's cool that they can draw from that, right? But like the things I'm the most excited about are like the new races. There's a reason I'm really excited about Edgelord's vampires, because it's like, oh man, that's amazing.
One of the reasons WoD failed so hard was because they spent more time like just lining up the cameos than they did, actually making story.
It was it was also very one note. It was like, do you totally muscular orcs that like to yell?
So when people talk about Arthas and stuff, like guaranteed we are going to see Arthas in Shadowlands. But honestly, I'd be fine if we didn't. And so far in Shadowlands, it's been pretty chill. Like in the leveling experience that I've played through, and I've played through every zone now, not in its entirety because it's not on the alpha, but from what I've seen, they are pretty restrained with it. There's maybe like 1 or 2 per zone, if that, of important lore characters. And of course, they are not alternate versions of our lore characters like they were in WoD. So instantly they're more important feeling because they are the people we've actually met, not different versions of them like in WoD. But so the question of, for example, whether, you know, someone we met in WoD, as in alternate Draenor, would we be able to meet them in Shadowlands? And we know when we get to Bastion, which is the first zone that you go to in the leveling experience after the intro experience. The first proper zone that you go to is Bastion. And when you get to Bastion, that's like the proper like heaven sort of place, the stereotypical heaven. And you get there, and the first thing that happens pretty much is that you meet a robot, like a kind of a watcher thing, who is, you know, in charge of meeting new arrivals and making them feel at home and stuff, and getting them on their way. And this robot says words to the effect of, please clarify like your name and planet and plane of existence, or like dimension, place of origin.
Reality.
So yeah, reality. Is it cool? And like, yeah. And so straight away we establish that there are people from different planets in the Shadowlands and from different realities and things like that. So presumably, yes, we could feasibly meet someone from WoD in Shadowlands. Do I think we will? No, because I don't think Blizzard want to introduce that kind of like, I don't think they want to make that mistake again. Basically, I think when we
been clarified, if I mean alternate Draenor is straight up like another. It's like a pocket universe. It's its own. It's its own reality.
Really unsatisfying. It's like all that stuff is just really unsatisfying. And like,
yeah, well,
so, like,
the nerd in me wants to say that if it is another reality, then it has its own. That reality has its own version of the Shadowlands that is unconnected.
Yeah, exactly. And there are infinite realms in the Shadowlands, so presumably there is a separate realm for people from a different, like, you know, kind of timeline and stuff like that. So I would imagine that everyone that we meet I imagine if Blizzard are doing this right, and I think they will, then everyone that we're going to meet in our Shadowlands has to be from our timeline. Like the Uther that we meet has to be our Uther. Otherwise, we're not going to care. Like the Lady Vash that we meet has to be our Lady Vash. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Because that's exactly what happened in WoD. You'd meet Ner'zhul, but who cares? It's not our Ner'zhul. You know, it's like, who cares? Like, it just didn't matter. And something would happen to Ner'zhul or Black Hand or whatever, and you'd be like, give a shit. Like, were you really upset when Velen died in WoD? I'd forgotten that even happened until I just mentioned it just now. Like,
Same.
Velen dies in WoD. Velen dies in WoD, but it's not our Velen. No one cares. Like, it takes away any kind of urgency or, like, stakes from it. And that would happen in Shadowlands. So I think it's kind of important that it is our people. There is one exception to that, and the question brings it up, and that is Gul'dan. And the reason Gul'dan is so interesting is because neither Gul'dan is from Azeroth. You know, one of them is from our Draenor, and one of them is from alternate Draenor. But they both died on our Azeroth. Like, both Gul'dans died on our Azeroth. So it's feasible that both Gul'dans, they both died in our timeline on our Azeroth. So it's feasible that both Gul'dans would be in our Shadowlands.
That's a very good point. I did not think of that.
And that sounds awesome. I love the idea of a double Gul'dan boss fight. It's perfectly feasible.
I am down with anything if it is cool and makes sense, and that is cool and it makes sense. So,
and they could explain it away. They could explain why he is the only one. Alternate Gul'dan died on alternate Draenor, I think.
Nope.
No, he died in Suramar.
He did. Yeah, he's the final boss fight.
I killed him. I was took healing.
Illidan killed him.
I guess Illidan did.
He's a kill-stealing bastard, that Illidan.
He is a kill-stealing bastard. But no, yeah. Okay, so just in case anyone's unclear in the chat, the first Gul'dan died in the Tomb of Sargeras when he went to like recover something and was ripped apart by the denizens within. You find his skeleton in there in the Tomb of Sargeras raid.
Yeah, this is during the events of Warcraft 3, yes?
Yeah, definitely. And if you click on it, or Warcraft 2 even. No, Warcraft 3, I can't remember. But anyway, if you click on his skeleton, you turn into him and you are hostile to your party and you can kill your party. It's really funny. And the second Gul'dan, it's Warcraft 2. It's Warcraft.
Yeah, Stompa and Chatroom. Yeah.
The Horde lost the second war was because Gul'dan was like, he did a bit of a Napoleon. He was about to take Britain And then he went, I'll come back for Britain later. I'm going to Russia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Illidan comes into the story in Warcraft 3 far too early. It would be very hard for him to get Gul'dan's skull if Gul'dan was still alive.
It is Warcraft 2. But and then alternate universe Draenor does die in the Nighthold in Suramar, atop the Nighthold. So they both die in our timeline on our Azeroth. So Blizz could do that, but still not have to bother getting any other alternate people in, and that would be perfect. And the thing is, there's I don't know if you remember the there was a audio drama, a 3-part audio drama leading up to Legion, which was really good and followed Gul'dan and Khadgar as they kind of like got everything happening on the Broken Isles and stuff like that. And Gul'dan does a lot of heavy. This is alternate Draenor Gul'dan. He does a lot of heavy thinking about like existential thinking because he's now in a world that had another Gul'dan who died, because that Gul'dan was doing what Kil'jaeden told him and ended up dying. And now you've got alternate Draenor Gul'dan who's doing what Kil'jaeden tells him and is like, hang on, I don't think Kil'jaeden really cares about Gul'dan. And he does like a lot of really existential thinking and feels very jealous and kind of like aggressive towards his other self who was here before him. And I just think that'd be a really interesting thing to explore in game, even if it was just a boss fight. I think would be splendid and like really interesting. And I would love to see that happen. Yeah.
I also just want a conversation between the two with a throwaway joke about how they are a hero in some stupid card game back in Azeroth.
Yeah. It would be good.
That would be delightful. So, yeah, those are all really good points. I don't need hard and fast rules. I don't need a hard line drawn. Like, if they think they can do something interesting with it, I say go for it. And I think you came up with a really good reason why having 2 Guldans and no one else from Draenor, alternate Draenor, makes a hell of a lot of sense. So yeah, that was kind of my thought too, was that probably not going to mess with alternate Draenor deaths in that. I don't think we're going to see multiple people, but yeah, I think there's a extremely good argument for 2 Guldans, and I think you just made that extremely strong argument.
Make it happen, Blizz. Yeah. Make it happen.
Andrew wants
lots of work for the Gul'dan voice actor there. Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, and Andrew writes in and says, hello and greetings, Garrett and Taliesin. I wanted to know your thoughts on what level our alts between 1 and 119 will be once the Shadowlands level squish happens, and will it be a fair squish in both your opinions? Thank you, Andrew, from your friendly neighborhood realm, Stormrage.
I kind of don't care. Like, I mean,
what matters to me more is that the leveling speed feels right.
Yeah. Like, for me, the annoying thing about the level squish will be characters that I have like halfway through their leveling right now, who then won't be able to play through an expansion in its entirety to get to max level like you're supposed to in the new leveling system. You know, they're already halfway there, so you know they'll only be able to play the first half of an expansion before they hit max level. And that's the annoying thing about the level squish for me. Like, they have said that it will be a faster leveling experience than it is now, and that's an important kind of part of the concept. So whatever, like whether you think your level got rounded down when it should have been rounded up or something like that, kind of doesn't really matter, because it's going to end up being quicker than it would have been without the level squish, and that's kind of the important. Like,
yeah. I will say, someone who's been working on alts right now, one thing that hit me was that I forgot how much better and user-friendly the quest design is in latter expansions, because I was hanging out in Burning Crusade, and I was out in Blade's Edge Mountains, and got some quests from Tashi's station where I had to have like a shield on me to absorb lightning hits from some monsters out there, and the shield makes you walk at like 25% movement speed, and the monsters are miles apart. And I was like, this is just terrible. And so I was thinking, I was high enough to just go to Pandaria. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to Pandaria where I can quest a lot quicker because the quests are designed not by masochists. So that was a thought that hit me was, will I be able to just jump to another continent because I'm sick of old expansions bull? Is that something I can do? I could also just constantly stay queued for dungeons and accelerate my XP a little bit that way as well. But
yeah.
And
I'm always queuing for dungeon whenever I'm leveling as well. And I mean, it is super quick. And when I say like it will be quicker in Shadowlands, that is with that is bearing in mind at the moment we've got a 100% XP boost. I mean, it would be quicker if that XP boost wasn't there.
Yeah,
like
it's an interesting thought, but yeah, like to me, that's not the concept of all of this I'm the most interested in. It's just like, does leveling up feel right? Does it feel like the right pace? Does it feel rewarding? That's all that really matters to me.
Because at the moment, it feels like a bit of a finger buffet. You know, it feels like you're just taking bits from here and bits from there, and you never really do anything properly. And
I have so many questions. A, I've never heard it referenced to a finger buffet, so I'm assuming a buffet made of fingers. And B, I'm recoiling because of fingers, and also because the idea of a buffet in a coronavirus world is distressing.
I know. No, okay, so a buffet, right? You go up with your plate and like it's pots of food or whatever.
Yes.
And, you know, everything that you're going to put on your plate involves using tongs or a spoon to put it on your plate, right? A finger buffet is like finger food that you use your fingers for. So it would be more kind of like, you know, like little kind of things.
Hors d'oeuvres.
You know? Hors d'oeuvres. But yeah, canapes, I guess. Kind of like... sandwiches, hot dogs, that kind of thing, I guess.
Gotcha.
So that would be a finger buffet. Not like my son, who spends pretty much every hour of his day right now trying to fit as many fingers into his mouth as he possibly can.
That delightful stage of childhood.
He loves it. He bloody loves it. You'll think he's sleeping, and then you'll be like, oh, he's sleeping. Let's, I don't know, watch a movie or have sex or something. And it's just like... And you're like, what's he doing? Oh no, he's eating. Like, how did he get his hand so far into his mouth? How did he do it? This is is he okay? Are they stuck?
They are not, and he's just having a great time.
Yeah.
Delightful. Yeah. So it hasn't been. It's not something I'm particularly concerned about. It is something I think there will be outrage about.
Oh,
you ever do that? You ever like Babe Ruth style, just like call the outrage? Like, well, this is going to make some people mad, but I don't care about it.
I don't think it's a special super talent to be able to do that, to be honest. I don't think that's a Taliesin exclusive superpower, is to see some news on Wowhead or something and go, gosh, I wonder if this is going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
It's like, it's usually quite an easy spot. Mm-hmm. I'm never disappointed.
You have a real talent for it.
Yeah, so I think the outrage around this when it goes live.
Spotting.
Yeah. I think the outrage, get my bib on, get my waterproofs on. But I think the outrage around this will be based around the fact that some expansions will clearly be better balanced than others. So there will be one expansion that gets you through at probably twice the speed of another one. You know, the fastest one will probably get you through considerably longer than the slowest one. Now, I don't think that really matters, because for me, a coherent leveling experience is more important than the most efficient leveling experience. One of the reasons leveling is so boring is because it doesn't feel coherent, because it doesn't feel like a complete experience. And it could last a little bit longer, but feel like a complete experience. And that would be a more satisfying and less boring leveling experience for me. You know,
because it's cohesive, right? Otherwise, it feels like just kind of an irrelevant means to an end. I'm just going through these motions because go, and that's how I level right now.
Totally.
And that's why I love. That's why I was like, I'm done with Blade's Edge Mountain. I'm going to Pandaria because I just want to level quicker with quests that are easier to complete, or at least just more intuitive to complete.
Definitely. And, you know, just leveling through an expansion isn't going to engage your brain so much more, but it's going to give your brain so much more stimulus of different things happening. and being sent to different places and things like that. So it's not going to take more effort. You can still be pretty mindless about it, but it's just going to be more fun is the idea. And I'd rather like something which is boring that lasts 1 hour seems longer than something which is fun but lasts 2 hours, right?
Yeah. I guess my biggest concern, try to tie a bow on my thoughts on this, is just say I don't accelerate my XP in any other way, that I just want to level through questing, and say I chose something like Burning Crusade that has some older, moldier quests. Can I skip some quests and still hit max level by the end of that expansion and move on with my character? Or like how tightly is it really tied to completing the whole damn expansion?
Okay, so we talked about this on this podcast before, but I think personally it's going to have to be, I think that the best way to do it, and something that Shadowlands is doing with its own quests right now, which is really interesting, is in Shadowlands, you have a very, very clear differentiation between the Lore Master story quests that you have to complete to progress the game and side quests.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. You're right, because this was a weird thing I wasn't expecting to give as much a crap about as I did when I went in and actually tried questing on the alpha. I really like this feature. Like when I read it on paper, I'm like, it's boring. I have played WoW since the beginning. I, an intellectual, already can tell the difference between a mainline quest and a side quest. But actually, it turns out it's like soup. And honestly, I loved it for the alpha because I was just like, I just want to get as far in Bastion as I can as quickly as I can. So I just skipped all the extraneous side crap and just mainlined. So it's a really nice feature. You're right. And they should apply that to the older content.
And I think what they would, taking that as a theory, the easiest thing would be to create a main storyline route through the expansion and clearly mark those main storyline quests in the same way they do Shadowlands quests. So at the moment, if something is a main storyline Lore Master quest, it's got a shield around the exclamation mark and question mark icons, and tune it so that going through those shield quests, those storyline quests, would get you to the end of the expansion, and doing the dungeons that go with it as well would get you to max level without. And I think that's best. But something we discussed on this podcast as well, which I think is an important part of this, is I think, particularly with latter expansions, I think the end game, there should be some end game included in that as well. Because if you go through Legion and your experience stops when you completed the leveling zones, you don't experience Suramar really, you don't experience the Broken Shore, you don't experience Argus. And if you don't experience Suramar or the Broken Shore or Argus, can you really say that you've played through Legion? I would say no. Like those are incredibly important parts of the Legion storyline. And the thing is, and same with WoD, and same with BFA, same with Pandaren, you don't actually see the end of that story unless you do get that end game content. So, I mean, you're left with the exact same problem that you've got now, in that you have a non-coherent experience because what have you done? You've gone through Legion and you've I don't know, got into a position where good, now we can start fighting the Legion, and then you move on to the current expansion. And that's incredibly unsatisfying to me. And that's not what I want from that leveling experience at all. So I believe, and the leveling experience in these latter expansions like Legion and WoD and BFA is more streamlined than it is in earlier expansions, which are a bit more kind of, dense, and they have bigger zones and things like that. So I think there is room to include the main quests in the Broken Shore, the main quests in Argus, like the main quests in Nazjatar and Mechagon, just the quests that like unlock those areas, and get you set up there. You don't have to do all the rep and stuff, but there's and the main quests in to get your cape and stuff and deal with the N'Zoth invasions and stuff like that. It's a couple of hours of questing there, and I'd love to see that. I would love to see, if you play through Wrath of the Lich King, I don't want your Wrath of the Lich King experience to finish until you kill Arthas. Like otherwise, have you really played the expansion?
I don't disagree with you that from a narrative perspective, that makes a whole lot of sense and is I think an admirable desire. I think the reality of making it happen from a game design aspect is probably way more effort than it is worth.
But then
Because what are you going to do? Are you going to retune ICC to be like a 5-man in Dungeon Finder that you can only queue up for once you've completed all the quests up until that point?
Good question. I have an answer for you. In Exile's Reach ends with a raid.
Yeah. That was designed from the ground up for that.
Yeah. But like Exile's Reach, you play through it as a one-player experience. You meet NPCs as you go through, and they join you in the instance at the end, and they take up the spots in that raid. There's no reason why you couldn't do that with ICC. And there's no reason why you'd have to play through the whole of the ICC. You could just jump into the Arthas boss fight. You could complete the storyline. There's no reason to play through the whole of ICC. It's not important. But you could get to the end of the storyline where, you're ready to attack ICC, and you could walk in the door and go straight to the boss fight, straight to Arthas's room, and just do that with like NPCs. There's no reason to tune the entire instance. There's no reason to have other raids before it. Like, you don't need to do thank you. So many names. Ulduar. There's no reason to do that. That's not an important part of the Wrath story. I mean, it's a really important part of like the Wrath experience at the time. But if you're just going through story, it's not really vital. So,
biggest Ulduar fan in the world, and I agree with you.
Yeah, and there's no reason why you couldn't get to that point and just be taken straight to the top of ICC. Maybe you jump on like a griffin and it flies you up there or something. Yeah, and then you just do that. But you have completed that story.
And we may be making minor assumptions on the difficulty to actually make that, but that is once again, you have convinced me. That's a great idea.
The way I see it is this entire thing is a lot of work anyway for Blizzard to make. So why put all of that work into it and still have an unfulfilling, non-coherent experience when, for the sake of a little bit more work, you could actually achieve what you wanted to achieve by doing it in the first place?
All right, cool. Just don't make Invincible drop from that really easy Arthas experience. Thank you.
No, I think you're probably right. But I think that should be how Blizzard approaches it. I think that it should end with, because there's no reason not to have Nazjatar or Mechagon as part of your BFA experience. It would be a real shame if you didn't. And I think it'd be a real shame if you didn't have the Broken Shore and particularly Argus as part of your and look, the raids are really important in latter expansions from a storytelling point of view as well. So let's do that. Let's go in there and have like a final boss fight from each raid in Legion as part of the storyline. It wouldn't take that much work, probably, says the man who's never programmed anything in his life. And it tells a story. You have that moment where, you see Argus appear in the sky, and then you go to Argus and you play through that and you do all that, and it would be great. It would be super fun. And then you finish with the Argus boss fight, and you have then, and then ding, you have made it. You've done it.
You've done such a good job convincing me of so many different things today. I like this idea.
I'm surprised that I've managed to convince you, but I think it's the way to do it, and I think it's the only thing that achieves from the experience what they say they want to give us. Because if you don't have that, I don't think we get what Blizzard have said they want to give us from the experience.
Can we get like awesome little supercut montages before that? Yeah. Now, can we get like the little thing of Wrathgate intercut with, I don't know, like Kel'Thuzad dying again? And
I don't see why not. And you've got Chromie there, right? So Chromie sends you on this adventure in the first place. So There's no reason why Chromie couldn't pop up and show you cutscenes and stuff, or like just skip bits if you need to. Like, it's like, we're going to go straight to the last fight of this. Let's roll. Like, there's no reason why that couldn't happen. If there's a dungeon which is particularly relevant to the story, you could just pop in there as like a little instance and stuff. Like, it could be done. No one's pretending it's not going to take a lot of work, but they're already putting a lot of work into this. So, it's not like we're asking them to do the work out of nothing. We're asking them to include this in all of the work that they're doing already.
Asking them to embellish their goal.
And because the problem is, in my opinion, without having the end of the story of the expansion, you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting from that leveling. You're not leveling through a story. You're leveling through the beginning of the story, what we do now. And it's the reason it's so unsatisfying.
I would like to point out that some expansions are, I think, easier to accomplish this than others. Because, like, I don't know, Legion, a lot of the raids don't feel like you could skip them. There's some major plot points in like every raid of Legion.
Yeah, but I mean, think about that. There are 4 raids. Even if you took the last boss fight of each raid, that's 4 little instances throughout the entire course of your leveling to max level. It's
Yeah,
not much
but then versus Wrath of the Lich King, I feel like you could probably just go to the Arthas fight and you've got what you need to do.
But then Wrath of the Lich King has a ton more leveling zones. It's like literally just got more leveling zones and more quests. So that kind of like, and that's what I'm saying. Okay. There is more of a focus on this max level stuff in latter expansions than there is in earlier expansions, like in the importance of the story. So I mean, you could work it. And a very good point that's just been brought up on the in the chat here. If I was Blizzard and if I'd had this kind of a germ of an idea and being like, wouldn't it be good to do this and to have like the end of your Wrath of the Lich King experience end with you killing Arthas in some kind of like instanced version of the boss fight? Do you know what would have been a really good place for me to practice doing that? Would have been when we redid all those boss fights for the 6th anniversary.
Yeah, to get my Deathwing mount.
You know all of those boss fights that they retuned and let us play through, like, which kind of shows they're okay doing that. Maybe that was kind of like a dry run for this.
Well, now thank you, Taliesin, because now what I really want is going with a full raid group and then just iPod shuffle through boss fights.
We just talked about how much work it would be. They did like 12 fights for a limited time event, you know? In comparison to 4 fights it would take to rework.
If anyone from Blizzard is listening, I would like you to DM Taliesin with exactly how much damn time it took to make that event.
Just saying. You know, and those fights had their own intro into the fight. They had their own introduction into the fight. They had like, you know, they had more mechanics than any of these kind of leveling fights would need to have. Just think it's kind of fun.
I'm convinced. I love this idea. Make it so. We're not devs. We don't need to worry about it. Our job here is to say we want this. It sounds cool.
Yeah, totally.
That's our job. That's as far as it extends.
Yeah, our job as a player base is to tell Blizz what we want. It's their job to make it happen.
Or sometimes tell us, hey, unrealistic request.
Well, listen, I also have like I feel like I have skin in this game, okay? I feel a special connection to this leveling process because, you know, famously, we did kind of come up with the idea on the weekly reset before they kind of made it public that they were doing it. We independently of them came up with the exact same idea and made a whole episode of the weekly reset on it and saying like, wouldn't this be a good idea?
Well, listen, just make sure you stay away from chickens so that you keep the same amount of skin in the game.
And I've got to say, the UI that I designed for it, just in 5 minutes, like to kind of show what I was talking about and animated for that episode of the weekly reset, kind of prefer it to the one in the alpha at the moment, just saying.
Ooh. Smack talk.
I've still got the files, Blizz. Call me.
Definitely harder to code UI than it is to just draw it up in Microsoft Paint, but yeah. Zulu from Khadgar writes in and says, on a Thursday or Friday in our house, we like to throw together all of the vegetables and bits and pieces that we haven't used throughout the week into a big stir fry. Stay with me here, Taliesin, and I promise to tie together. This way, nothing goes to waste, and it's a nice, easy meal to prepare. Is BFA like this? You guys have spoken before about how BFA feels clunky and disjointed in terms of story. Was the expansion an attempt by Blizzard to use up leftover bits of lore from Warcraft's past that hadn't been dealt with yet? Ajara, Nazoth, Kultiris. They didn't mention Jaina. I would also put Jaina in here. None of them warranted a dedicated expansion, but they were still prominent enough in the lore that Blizz were obligated to flesh them out in WoW at some point. Shadowlands feels like WoW lore is going to stop resting on its Warcraft 3 era laurels and go in a new direction. This is good. Maybe Blizzard realized this was necessary back in Legion, but before they could do that, before they went shopping for the fresh produce of characters, worlds, and arcs, they needed to cook up a big BFA stir fry so that all the other stuff didn't go to waste. Thanks for the podcast. It's my favorite hoovering soundtrack yet. Don't know what hoovering is.
Vacuuming.
Oh, there we go. That makes sense.
Because vacuum was invented by J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, I've got I have different thoughts on this. I mean, a little with BFA, but I feel like I've mentioned this before, and I still believe this, that BFA kind of feels like a return to kind of like an attempt at returning to old school Warcraft, like Horde and Alliance pitted against each other, and we're going to kind of earmark different major threats all around. Kind of like vanilla. I mean, we had an old god, we had... I suddenly can't think of literally any other boss in vanilla World of Warcraft. It ended with Naxxramas, for crying out loud. It was all over the place. I mean, it was also very large in terms of, continents and theming because of just how much landmass and different races and whatnot there were. But at the end of the day, it was Horde v Alliance, and here's a bunch of bigger threats to go and do PvE content in. And to me, that's really what BFA feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's what they did. Just cooking up all stuff they needed to get out the way and clear the way for Shadowlands. Firstly, I'd like to agree with the comment that says, yeah, I really love that they're doing all new stuff with Shadowlands. Mm-hmm. And that's why I don't want to see any Titans. That's why I don't want to see any Light versus Void stuff in this expansion. Like there have already been hints at Light versus Void stuff in this expansion already. But that's cool if it's setting up next expansion. I don't need to see it in this expansion. I want all the new stuff. I want all the new races. I want all the new lore. That's what's exciting to me about Shadowlands. I don't think they just threw everything in a pot for BFA, and I'll tell you why. Because I think if they had done that, just randomly plucking things that they wanted to take care of, if that had been their approach, I wouldn't have been able to predict every single thing that they were going to have in the expansion before the expansion was even announced. So, before the expansion was announced at BlizzCon 2017, I guess, I think it was. Was it 2016? 17. 2017.
Googling it right now. 17.
Yeah. I made a video where I predicted literally everything in that expansion. Jaina and Ashara and N'Zoth and island expeditions and pretty much everything. And that to me, I didn't do that because I'm a genius. I did that because I was able to do that, or I am a genius, but I was able to do that because the story was quite clearly pointing to those things throughout WoD and Legion. And for me, it was the next natural progression for the storyline was to go to Ashara and N'Zoth. And I wasn't the only person that thought that at all. It was clearly where the story was building up to from the very beginning of Legion when Ashara made her comeback, at the beginning of Azuna, which we know now that they added the scaling after the leveling zones had been designed, and originally it was supposed to be done in a set order, and Azuna was clearly the first in it was the bastion of Legion, and it was clearly setting that up from then, and the story after Legion was clearly pointing towards N'Zoth and Ashara, and they had sown some very explicit hints for that throughout Legion, and it was fascinating. So no, I mean I don't think it was. I think it was a natural progression for the story to go there, and I think they muddied the waters with the whole faction war thing. And now we know that one of the reasons that they muddied the waters with the faction war things was to set up Sylvanas' path in Shadowlands, and knowing that they wanted Sylvanas to have this position of everyone hating her, and having rejected the world of the living and the Horde in Shadowlands, that kind of made them do more with the faction war and the war campaign than I think they should have in BFA. And I think the main focus should have been on the Ashara and the N'Zoth stuff in BFA. And I think that's BFA's big narrative failing, personally. We've talked about this loads on this podcast.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm being pretty quiet, because I'm just this is pretty well documented.
Yeah, totally.
Everyone knows I don't like it. I'm not going to remind you of it.
And I agree with the question in that it does feel like it was just plucked at random, the Ashara and N'Zoth stuff, because the whole kind of thrust of the expansion in a way kind of got sidetracked by this faction war thing, which turned out not to be all that important.
Yeah, it's weird because I think about BFA the same way, and when I stop and think about it, like Battle for Azeroth, I think it's just a terrible name. I think kind of the way they teed it up in the beginning as it's about the faction war was wrong, because to me it's about Ajara and Azoth. That's really the main arc of it. I mean, and tying all the way back to dealing with like a proto or like a man-made, Titan-made old god with Cahoon. Like, it's like that. There's an old god arc that from the first raid to the last raid.
Oh yeah, and like that old god arc is there in Legion as well.
Yeah,
it only picks that up, and so I'm certain that when Blizz at some point there was, when WoD was being made, there was like a whiteboard up with a plan, and it was WoD, and then it was Legion, and then it was the Ashara and Azoth expansion after that. And it's the faction war that got added later. It's the faction war that got grabbed at random and kind of thrust into that and kind of diluted. But the plan was the Ashara and Azoth expansion.
Yeah, would you say something I could disagree with already on this damn program today? Like, yeah, it's so weird because that's exactly how I think about it. I think of it as like, Battle for Azeroth, that's an Azoth expansion. You know what feels tacked on? The war campaign.
And no one was like, we made a joke in all of our coverage leading up to BFA. Just repeating the line, there are no old gods in BFA. A line which was like clearly appreciated as a joke at the time, but which some people, when they're trying to say how stupid we are, come back and remind us of like a gotcha. Because we'd be like, oh yeah, so Stormsong's full of tentacles and tentacle face people, and but that's clearly some kind of a mistake, because don't forget, there are no old gods in BFA. Wink, wink, wink.
I really don't want to meet the people that don't understand the satire in that.
Yeah, exactly. And like now we get people when they're trying to like roast us in comments and stuff and explain why Taliesin and Evitel are terrible people, going, well, don't forget they were saying there are no old gods in BFA, and they were totally wrong about that. So but no, it was definitely the faction war that became the thing that they plucked at random and added to BFA. The Shara and the N'Zoth stuff was probably part of the plan a couple of expansions ahead of time, to be perfectly honest. I think from what I've heard in interviews and stuff, WoD and Legion and BFA were planned as something of a trilogy, and they were planned as 3 beats in the same story. And I that's definitely how it kind of played out. But then the faction war thing got in the way of it. And I think the faction war was probably added because they'd already come up with the idea for Shadowlands, and they wanted to give more focus to Sylvanas becoming what she is in Shadowlands. And I think that was kind of one of the reasons why the faction war was kind of like wheedled into the Ashara. And that's pure speculation, but that's just how it feels to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Having said that, the leveling through BFA was fun, partly because of the faction war stuff. But in hindsight, the entire expansion lacks focus to me, and that's probably why. And that's certainly not a focus that WoD or Legion lacked. Like, say what you like about WoD and Legion, and we do, but both of those were kind of like laser focused in terms of their theme. If not their narrative. Like the WoD narrative is all over the place and makes actual no sense. But like in terms of theme, it's so strong.
And that's orcs. That's the theme of WoD.
Yeah, totally. But that's what you need. Like you need something that you can sum up in like one half sentence like that, right? Yeah. Like you can do that with all the good expansions, like Wrath, Arthas in the snow, boom,
creepy frozen dead things.
Yeah, totally. And undead ice stuff. Like that's it. And it's awesome. Like it's so cool. Like, Kata, dragon destroys the world. Like
Kata was actually kind of a disjointed mess.
yeah, exactly. But like you could sum up the problem is it didn't keep to that theme. Like and the best ones are the ones that do kind of, and like WoD was like laser focused on that theme. And it was great. Like Mists, China, like the end. And it was brilliant, and it was really, really good. And Legion the same. Like you need more than the name of the expansion.
Why do I don't. This is its own thing, and I know you've got to go soon, so I don't want to go too deep into it. But like, why do I think of Mist so much more fondly than I think of WoD? Because Mist also had this like total aside with like time for a faction war. Garrosh is mad, but we're also going to tell this entire story of the Pandaren people.
Yeah.
But to me it worked. I loved everything in Mists of Pandaria. I really truly have a lot of love for that expansion, and it's stuck with me. And I don't think BFA is going to stick with me.
No. But then Garrosh was there from the very beginning in Mists. And N'Zoth's presence was there, but N'Zoth wasn't physically there.
Yeah, it's rare that I criticize something for being too subtle because I tend to get annoyed when things beat me over the head. But yeah,
all the time. Like I always try and temper my criticism of BFA and the way that in hindsight, the way the narrative kind of and the theming of it didn't work. I always try and temper that with saying, thank you for trying. Like, thank you for trying to tell a more subtle story, and it didn't work. Yeah. Probably. Having said that, there are bits of it that really, really do. Like, and some of the storytelling in BFA is amongst the best that I think the game has ever had. But in the main themes of the expansion, it probably didn't really work. And I think like a main thematic kind of feel of an expansion needs to be a bit stronger than how it turned out to be. But thank you for trying. Like some awesome stuff in there. Yeah, and the way the story was told in raids and stuff as well was exquisite. Like, there's loads of great storytelling in BFA, but just the general theme of the story wasn't properly realized or strongly enough.
Yeah. Now, as I mentioned before, I really enjoy the leveling experience of BFA on both sides. I was expecting to love the Kultira stuff because I just naturally love anything that's nautical. And I did, but I was so surprised by how much I liked everything going on in Zandalar. Like, I really, as much as I hate navigating that capital city, I really bought into it. I really got into the plight of Princess Talanji and King Rastakhan, and like again, Wan Samdi being just such a crazy standout character. Like, I haven't fallen in love with a unique character in Warcraft like that since like Warcraft 3. Most of my favorite Warcraft characters have ties to Warcraft 3, and I think of Wan Samdi kind of in the same light. Like, this is just like such a strong character that's fun and funny and dark and mysterious and mischievous and probably evil, and all the things I like in my cheesy Warcraft characters.
Elbada in the comments saying, I think Tally is overestimating how important a good story is at the end of the day. I'm not actually, if I didn't make it clear, sorry, I'm not actually talking about the strength of the story. Because like I say, I'm using WoD as an example of something that did this right. And like I say, the story in WoD was terrible and didn't make any sense and wasn't properly realized at all. Like, one moment the Iron Horde were the baddies, and the next moment they were literally the goodies and on our side, just because Gul'dan had like done some demon stuff, and it just made no sense. No, I'm talking about how strong a theme of an expansion is realized and how satisfying that is in your experience of an expansion. And so, yeah, WoD had story which was terrible all over the place, but it did realize its theme much better and stick to that theme much better. And that was satisfying about WoD. And that's something that BFA didn't do. And I think that BFA clearly isn't going to go down as one of the great expansions, but I think people's opinions on it will mellow. And I think it's going to be remembered a lot better than it is now. And I think
it's going to have a cataclysm effect where years down the road we go, it wasn't that bad.
I have not had that with Cataclysm, but I think it'll have a Mists thing. So people like there are people who say they love Mists who never even played Mists, and that's because when they get sent back to Pandaria now and they start flying around or whatever, it's beautiful and it's stunning and they're great zones with a really strong theme, and they're like, wow, this is great. I love this. This is awesome. I want to play through this. Like, Mist is one of my favorite expansions. I never really played it. I did, but I hear a lot of people saying that. And like, I think BFA is going to be one of those things. There are going to be moments where you level through BFA in our new leveling system, and you'll be like, these zones are amazing. There'll be some reason for you to go back to Boralis one time or something, and you'll jump on your flying mount and you'll fly over Boralis, and you'll be like, holy shit, this is like literally the best city in the game. This is incredible, and like this whole Tiragard sound area is amazing. Like, and it is, that's the thing. And like, you'll play through the leveling quests and you'll do your Jaina stuff and you'll be like, this is incredible, this is so good. And I think that'll mean that people remember the expansion a lot better than they think of it now.
Yeah,
rightly or wrongly, I think they will.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to wrap it there. And I know you got a heart out today, Tally. So folks, thank you so much for writing in. Really appreciate it. The reaction to this podcast still blows my mind because for me, I wake up really early, and so like the amount of pre-production that goes into it is you know, there's not a ton. We earmark conversations we want to have for later, but y'all seem to really dig it, and it doesn't fall on deaf ears. Thank you everybody who writes in. If you tweeted us, even if it's about a dick hungry chicken joke. Like, I love seeing that the show affects people in positive light. So thanks. And keep writing in. wowkillercast@gmail.com if you want to get in on our next mailbag episode, or even possibly do our job for us and give us an idea, a topic that we find so interesting, we just turn it into an entire episode, which is what we did last week. So wowkillercast.
Please do that. Please do that. So Bex, I want the Dick Hungry Chicken merchandise designed by next episode. For no pay. Bex, I know you're like a professional artist and game developer, but we can give you some great exposure. Okay, we can pay you in some really good exposure here. Okay, which, as everyone knows, is it's so valuable. So that would be good. So the Dick Hungry Chicken merchandise, please. And
as someone who still hasn't been meaning to hang up their really expensive piece of paper from an art school.
Oh.
From an art school, that entire joke hurts me physically to listen to. Oh, the amount of times.
I know. Well, listen, man, I come from an acting background, so I've heard that so many times as well, as you can imagine. But yeah, so that's what I want, and I want other people to come up with just basically the topics that we're going to discuss for the next month. Would be great. Thank you.
That'd be so wonderful. Thank you. Seriously, love the community around the show. Y'all are amazing. You are worth getting out of bed for. It's not because of Tally. Tally is not worth getting out of bed for, but you, fine listeners, are.
If I'm in the bed, no one wants to get out of bed.
Oh, I mean, with your quarantine hair,
yeah.
I'm gonna agree, man. You're pulling off. You make disheveled look intentional.
Wait, this is disheveled? I spent 3 hours in makeup for this.
Oh, well then you should join a mid 2000s emo band.
To get in character for Taliesin anyway, you know.
All right. Well, tell us if somehow folks don't know where to find your WoW content already, where can people find you?
You can find our WoW content on YouTube, Taliesin and Evitel Do Games, on Twitch, Taliesin and Evitel, and on Twitter as well, Taliesin Evitel, and on Patreon. But don't worry about that.
You figured it out. You'll figure it out. I am a patron of T&E. I highly recommend it.
You?
Yeah, I'm. And I'm not a patron of very many programs.
Ask. That's fine.
I legitimately like the stuff you guys make. It's almost like that may have been a reason I wanted to do a podcast with you.
Before this podcast started today, and you were like, "Oh, I saw that you had some new pin badges out, but they sold out again already." I was like, "Dude, just ask. I'll give you a pin badge."
I don't want preferential treatment. I want to pay for it and have it shipped to me like a normal human being. I don't want them. But I appreciate the offer. Yeah. Folks, I'm Garrett Art on Twitter. You can follow me on there. The show also has a Twitter. You can follow at WowKillerCast. But mostly just post when we're going live, when shows are posted, stuff like that. But love talking with people on there. So go give that a follow. Everything else, this show included, can be found at amove.tv. You can subscribe to just this show if you want to. If you're an audio listener and you're like, what do these two dorks look like? You can subscribe to the video version over at youtube.com/WowKiller. So yeah, go check it out. amove.tv for everything I do. And a big shout out to Andrew Allen. I can't talk here at the end. For our outro music, check his work out over at andrewallenmusic.com. That's our intro and our outro music. Does great work. It's going to wrap it up for this week's WoW Killer. Until next time, don't let a chicken bite you where you don't want it to bite you.
Keep your dick safe, boys.
Dicks in for chickens?
Oh, those chickens.
I hope this meme never dies. Oh God.
Yes.
That was fun. I know I say this like every episode, but that went to some fun places, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Much like the chicken that one time.
That's right. You started talking over the intro. I'm trying to. I always run it through a levelator, so I have to cut off the music, or the music will end up being a million times louder.
Shit! Did I dick that all up?
No. I'm just explaining why I'm even listening to it again. No, this is not a complaint. This is just me talking out loud about the process and why I would even be listening to you in the first place.
Well, I've got a flat to go and look at, so I better go. I'm afraid.
Yep.
So I might not be streaming today. And when people ask me if I'm not streaming or why I'm not streaming, I'm going to tell them it's because of Twitch blackout, even though it's just because I'm going to see a flat.
There's so much Hearthstone drama. I completely forgot there was ever talk of a blackout. So we'll see how that shakes out. Today's tack is going to be so weird. Good luck with your house hunting. And,
thank you. We've accepted a house, and a new house for renting, not for buying. We're not like cool like Mr. GM buying houses, but so we have kind of accepted it, but we're just holding off putting down our deposit on it because this one looks nicer that we're seeing today. So either way, I think we're gonna have a new flat basically, which is like,
well, congrats.
Yeah. Should be fun, yeah.
It's exciting. Well, I guess keep me posted on the move because I could see it probably in interfering with recording times. So
maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, go see it. Good luck. Chat room, you've been awesome. I'll see you guys at 5:30 Eastern time for a live Angry Chicken. It's going to be a heavy one today. So come and give us the emotional support to push through a mountain of drama. That'll be fun. Wow, that's going to be a proper grown-up one this week. Yeah. Interesting. Bye now. Well, good luck with that. Good luck.